Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 5 of the 2018 Tata Steel tournament played on the 17th of January. We'll look at the results of round 5 and the standings at the end of the video, but first let's look at one of the games. In this video I will show you the game between Peter Svidler and Ho Yifan. You can see both players here in action. They didn't play in the usual venue of Wijk aan Zee. It was the tournament going on tour today, and they played in the media capital of the Netherlands, Hilversum. Peter Svidler is a many times World Championship candidate and an 8-time Russian champion. And Ho Yifan is the strongest female player in the world. Not the current world champion, but the female player with the highest rating. I will go through the opening moves quite quickly, and then we get to a very interesting position. Svidler opened c4 on the first move, e6, knight c3 in d5, d4, bishop b4, we are in the Ragozin variation of the Queen's Gambit declined, knight f3, knight f6, Svidler took in the center, e takes, and here bishop g5 is the main move according to the theory, but Svidler played bishop f4. Ho Yifan castled, rook c1, c6, e3, and here Ho Yifan decides to give up the pressure against c3 and redeploys the bishop back to d6. That bishop was swapped, and queen c2. Rook e8, bishop d3 developing, knight b d7 developing, Svidler castled, knight f8, h3, g6, knight jumps into e5. Ho Yifan is going to redeploy her knights. Knight h5, rook fe1, rook e7, queen a4, knight d7, and Svidler does not want to swap the knights. He plays knight f3. White has more space, so he wants to keep pieces on the board. And Peter Svidler said afterwards that he felt that White had a stable positional push here. Ho Yifan played the knight to f6, b4 starting the typical minority attack, a6, and now b5. And Svidler said after black allows b5, he has a very good position. Ho Yifan took with the c-pawn, and now White can take back with the knight because of this pawn being pinned. If you take, then your rook on a8 is unprotected. Bishop d7 is a mistake, and now the fun really starts. This position was shown to tournament leader Anish Giri, who already had finished his game at this time, and he immediately found the right continuation for White, but Peter Svidler did not. His first move was fine. He took the queen, and of course black has to take White's queen, but now Svidler played rook b1, and Anish Giri saw within a second that White can win material here with the move knight c8. Svidler had also looked at knight c8, but he did not see the continuation. Why is this so good? Well, let's have a look. For starters, you're attacking the rook, and if you are going to save that rook, you can play rook e6, and that's important because if you play rook e8, then there is knight b6 with a fork, and White will win an exchange. So after knight c8 you have to play rook e6, but then there is knight g5, and in Peter Svidler's own words, the existence of this move completely escaped me. And luckily Svidler only found out after the game that he could have won material with this move, because if he had found that during the game, then it would have been very difficult to continue. Svidler said, "How can you miss a move that can attack a rook? Something is wrong with my head. This is bizarre." So why is knight g5 so strong? It's attacking the rook again, and if you play then the rook to c6, then there is knight e7 check, lots of knight forks, and White will win material. So all this after bishop takes a4 and then knight c8. As said, Anis Giri found this within a second, but Svidler did not find it. He played rook b1 and felt embarrassed afterwards. Maybe Peter Svidler should do the daily 1-minute challenge on Chess to Impress to train his tactical skills. After rook b1, Hooijen played b5. That pawn was hanging on b7, and knight e5. And Svidler said here, after the game, what I did was good, were it not for the fact that black's next move is very strong. He said, my next move would be rook c1, and I'm much better. But Hooijen found that strong move, which is knight d7. One of black's ideas is to play knight b6 and then to c4, and that is a very good knight there, and then black will be fine. Svidler said that he suddenly realized he didn't have anything here and that he had to give up a pawn. He also said he can never be worse about after losing that pawn, because the bishop on a4 is such a stupid piece. This bishop, of course, is not doing much there. And Svidler didn't think he was in trouble here, but he thought he had to give up a pawn to be able to play on to try and win this game. You cannot take on d7, because then rook takes d7 and the knight on d6 is trapped, so this is winning for black. But Svidler played rook e c1. That gives up a pawn, because Hooijen took on e5, d takes, and rook takes. Black is a pawn up, but as Svidler said, this bishop is not doing much, so it's still okay for white. Rook c7 infiltrating in black's position and putting pressure on the f7 pawn. So Hooijen played rook f8, and Svidler explained that his original plan was to play rook bc1, get the other rook in the game, but then black has this option, d4, and if you then play g4, which we also see in the game, Svidler said if I play g4 to try and get what I got in the game, then there is d takes e3, and if you take that knight, then Hooijen has a tactic, and she'll be even better after rook d5, winning the piece back with this double attack. And that's why Svidler said he had to start with rook c6 to protect the knight on d6. Hooijen played rook a8 here, and Svidler showed another variation. He showed rook e6, and then he can take on a6, win his pawn back. Rook d8, now the knight is attacked twice and cannot be defended anymore. It's also pinned, because this rook would be hanging if the knight plays, but there's still a way out. Knight b7 is still possible, counter-attacking black's rook. Rook takes a6 and knight takes d8. And then Svidler showed that Hooijen could then play rook d6, attacking the knight, knight b7 and rook c6 to put the rook on the open file. And he said black can give the b5 pawn up for activity. Bishop takes b5, bishop takes b5, rook takes b5. The computer doesn't like this very much, but this was a variation that Svidler showed, which he recommended for black. Another variation Svidler showed after rook e6, rook takes a6, rook d8, knight b7, rook takes a6 and knight takes d8 is rook b6. But then he said he can play rook c1, b4, and here he said, I will never have enough to win. My knight on d8 is cut off, and the bishop on a4 is returning to good squares, and this is very close to a draw. One last variation he showed here after rook b6 instead of rook c1 is rook b4, and then king f8, an important move. Bishop takes b5, bishop takes b5, and a4 to win back the piece, because that bishop is now pinned. But then king e8, and it's actually black who is winning, because yes, white will win the bishop back that he has sacrificed, but this knight is cut off and black will win that piece, so black will end up with more material. All these variations were shown by Peter Svidler straight after the game. This is all that he saw during the game, and it's interesting to get the thoughts from a super grandmaster. Anyway, back to the game after rook c6. Hooijen did not play rook e6, she played rook a8. And we got a move repetition. Both players were very low on time, so Svidler repeated the moves to get some extra time on his clock, because with every move 30 seconds were added to the clocks. Rook back to f8, rook c6 and rook a8. But Svidler did not want to draw yet. He played now rook bc1. Here he said that Hou Yifan should have gone for rook e6 again. It's very important for black to start swapping pieces, he said. And he gave this variation: rook c8 check, rook takes, king g7, knight e8 check, king h6, and he said this is not the end of the world for black. This position should be about even, and the computer agrees. But after rook bc1, Hou Yifan did not go for rook e6. She went for d4. And if you now take that pawn, then there is rook d5, winning the pawn back. You cannot protect this pawn. Black will win it back. But after d4, Svidler played g4. You cannot go to g7 with the knight because of a rook c8 check. Rook takes, and you have to interpose your knight on the 8, which will get taken. White wins a piece. So after g4, the knight went back to f6 and e4. And Svidler commented, suddenly black's pieces are very stuck, and I felt this was quite promising for me. He's starting a pawn storm on the king side. Rook e6 and f4, another pawn. b4, activating the bishop, attacking the rook. Rook c8 check, rook takes, and king g7. Your knight is hanging, and Svidler played e5, protecting his knight and attacking black's knight. Knight went to d5, and now Svidler wins material with bishop c4. We're on move 37, both players still had to make 3 moves to the time control. You cannot go to b6. Your rook is hanging, you're counter-attacking white's rook, because then there is bishop takes e6, knight takes c8, and the bishop takes back. And very important is that after d3, you can stop the pawn with knight c4 just on time. Of course, if the pawn gets to the second rank, the bishop covers the promotion square, but this knight is stopping the pawn just on time. So after bishop c4, knight b6 is not an option, and Hou Yifan played knight takes f4. And here white can take the exchange, but after knight takes e6, that knight is very strong there, and this is a lot more difficult to win than what we see in the game, according to Svidler. After knight takes f4, he did not take on e6, he played rook c7 and called this a very important touch, and he couldn't see a way for black to extricate herself here. This move is using the fact that the knight on f4 is unprotected. But there's still a way out for black, but poor Hou Yifan did not find it. She played d3, but what she should have played is knight takes h3 check. Let's look at one variation. King h2, rook takes e5, king takes knight, and then d3, and that secures the draw. You cannot take that pawn because of rook e3 check, winning the bishop. And if you play, instead of bishop takes d3, rook takes f7 check, then king h6, and you have to rush back with your rook to control the d-pawn. White is a piece up, but black has 3 pawns compensation, and of course this pawn is very strong and still cannot be taken. But Hou Yifan had very little time left. As said, she played d3 and lost the game. Svidler took on f7 with check. It's check, and the knight is hanging at the same time. King h6, rook takes f4, and d2, which was the 40th move, so now both players had time to think again, and Svidler did not need much time, because he could just control the pawn with rook d4. Here Hou Yifan resigned. d1 queen does not work, because black's rook on e6 is still hanging. White just takes the new queen, bishop takes, and bishop takes e6, and white is too much material up. On this picture from the webcam you see Svidler executing his last move, rook d4, and he missed a great tactic that would have won him an exchange, and he said in his interview afterwards he had to win the game all over again, but he succeeded in the end. For Hou Yifan, this was the 4th loss in 5 games. The only game that she drew was against Kramnik, and she's in a tough situation now with 8 rounds to go, because all these super grandmasters will now target her. They will try to win the game they play against her because she is in such a tough situation in the tournament. The results of round 5, we saw Svidler against Hou. The world champion played against one of his predecessors, and Kramnik had a better endgame with 2 extra pawns, but there were doubled G pawns and Carlsen was able to hold the draw. Jones and Geary played a quick draw. Anand and Wei Yi also a quick draw. Wesley So got his first win in the tournament after 4 draws against Adiban. Fabiano Caruana is struggling in this tournament. He lost against Mamedyarov with the white pieces. Both players will meet each other again in the Candidates tournament in March. And Matlakov and Karyakin played a draw. Karyakin is the only player who has drawn all his 5 games. The standings after round 5, the day before the rest day. Geary, Anand and Mamedyarov are on +2. Half a point behind are Carlsen, Kramnik and Wesley So. 5 players on 50%, Karyakin, Jones, Matlakov, Wei Yi and Svidler. As said, Caruana doesn't have a good tournament, he's on -2. Adiban and Hou are at the bottom of the table. Thursday the 18th of January is a rest day for the players, and round 6 will be played on Friday the 19th of January. And I will be here after the game, after the round, to tell you what happened. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment, and if you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.